and get started. Good morning. If I don't know you, I'm April Nyman with the Arts Council, and I want to welcome you to our first in our series for 2023 for our diversity and equity series. We're very thankful that we can be able to offer this, and please let everyone know it's free and open to our community, and we really want to encourage everybody to join as they can. I'd like to thank our partners, Angela Wilson and Chesapeake Arts Center, Nicole, for supporting these efforts. And I'm going to turn it over to Angela to introduce our speaker today.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, April. I'm happy to introduce our speaker for today. Our speaker is Ruby Lopez Harper, and she's been with us before. When we first started this series, she was our first speaker back in January of 2022. So I'm happy to welcome her back and introduce her to others. So first of all, Ruby is Mexican. She's a mother, she's a wife, a dancer, photographer, poet, and I love this, social justice warrior. She is the executive director of the Craft Emergency Relief Fund, and her work has included external equity strategies and field education, leadership development, local arts development, and cohort building for the local arts agency field, arts and culture administrators, and arts marketers. She currently works on projects with the Association of Tribal Archives, Libraries and Museums, and has consulted with numerous local, state, regional, and national organizations on grant making, equitable practice, and capacity building initiatives. So she has quite an extensive bio, so I'm not going to read it all, but let me just skip to this part. Ruby's work has focused on equitable access, grant making, supporting individual artists, community development, economic development, cultural tourism, marketing, and public art. She draws on a varied background that includes corporate affairs, community relations, volunteerism, employee engagement, marketing communications, and business administration. She served on the Emerging Leaders Council for Americans for the Arts, was the primary contact for the Arts and Economic Impact Study for Central Ohio, and served as a mentor with the Arts Administration of Color, DMV. So what I would like to do at this time is, like I said, welcome Ruby back. I'm very happy to have you today and also introduce her to others. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Ruby.
Thank you, Angela, and thanks y'all for the invitation to come back. I'm so excited. This is oddly some of my favorite stuff to talk about. So hello, hola, bienvenidos. Yo soy Ruby Lopez Harper. I am third generation American con raíces in Michoacán, Mexico. I'm a brown-skinned, abled, cisgender female using the pronouns she, her, ella. I'm wearing prescription glasses, a red shirt with Corazón Latino written across the front. My dark brown and purple curly hair is pulled back in a side bun, and I'm sitting in my office at home surrounded by artwork and inspirational Post-it notes. Today, I'm calling in from the unceded lands of the Nacotch Tank, now known as Silver Spring, Maryland. I honor and celebrate all the Indigenous communities, their elders past and present, as well as future generations. I honor the generations of displaced and enslaved people that built and continue to build the country that we occupy today. Since our activities are being shared digitally over the internet, I acknowledge the legacy of colonization embedded within the technologies, structures, and ways of thinking we use every day. I'm using equipment and high-speed internet not available in many Indigenous communities. I want to give credit to Adrienne Wong of Spider Web Show in Ontario, Canada, who was the author of the virtual space acknowledgement, and to the individuals in my life and circle who continue to inspire examination of practice, responsibility, and language. And I'm going to drop in the chat a link that you can use to explore the lands that you are occupying. It is such an honor to be with you all today to talk about DEIA in marketing and share some ideas to spark exploration, investigation, and activation. My goal today is to share some insights, invite you to explore your own connection to inclusion, and offer some ideas on moving your work forward. My goal today is to be firm but gentle, inviting but not accommodating. This work is work, and there's no space for being timid. I'll be providing links in the chat to share resources and allow you to visit the sites and materials on your digital device at your leisure, and also to take back and share with your colleagues. Before we get started, I also want to share that language is vital and so important as we navigate community. In that interest, I may use the term Latina to describe myself, and will use terms like people of the global majority and BIPOC to describe individuals who identify as Black, Indigenous, or people of color. I want to acknowledge that while these terms do not fully encompass or represent the breadth and depth of ethnicity, racial, and indigeneity, these are the terms I use most commonly in my work, and I encourage you to learn and explore the terms that resonate with your community. During my time with Americans for the Arts, I led the team that assembled a fairly comprehensive terminology bank that might be helpful to you in your work, and I'm dropping that link in the chat for you. We're going to be using Jamboard today as part of our interactive moments, and so we're going to practice just a little bit now. I'm going to drop another link in the chat box. If you'll take a moment to click that and join me on the Jamboard. So clicking on the link in the chat box will take you to a web window that looks like a whiteboard. You'll see a navigation bar at the top of the screen with arrows to the left and right of small pages. We'll use those to move across and back to pages we're working on today. To the left of the screen, you will see a menu bar of options to place content on the whiteboard. We'll be using Post-its, which is the fourth option down. Click, type, you can select the color of your Post-it, click save, and the Post-it will drop onto the whiteboard. So let's try that now. I put the feeling wheels. If you could let us know how you're feeling today. Happy, love it. Yep, you can also put your name and a dash. See, Dan is out there content, feeling inquisitive. Very good, very good. Oh, somebody moved my wheel. Feeling great today. Susan, empowered. Loving it, loving it. Allergy ridden. Oh, yeah, that's coming, isn't it? Oh, somebody moved our prompt. We've got a hopeful, grateful for the great day and opportunity to understand DEIA better. Very good, very good. So I think y'all are getting the hang of it. Nicole is content. Thank you, Nicole. So we're going to try flipping to the next page. Up at the top on the right, you're going to click right for the next frame, and that should take you to page 2. And the prompt is welcome. Thank you, everyone, for giving that a try. So I want to start with a little reflection today. So if everyone could close or lower your eyes, or if you're on camera, turn off your camera, whatever is most comfortable for you. And I'm going to invite you to recall a moment, a time in your memory where you attended an artistic performance or an artistic event or an artistic experience, and you felt incredibly welcome, seen, belonged, or how you want to define that feeling. Sitting in that moment, can you recall the elements, the ingredients that culminated in that moment? The visuals, the verbals, the sights and the sounds, the building, the people you interacted with. Now take that back one step to what made you decide on that experience. What was the lead up to finding yourself in that moment, to finding yourself in that experience? And then just really we're going to take 3 minutes to do this. Just really immerse yourself in that memory from start to finish. What prompted you find yourself there? You're experiencing this moment. What are the things that are drawing you in? What are the things that are activating you or that are resonating or connecting with you? And I'm going to put my timer on and just leave it kind of quiet. So we're going to lean into that quiet discomfort. Thank you. So I'm going to drop the Jamboard link into the chat. And if everyone could use Post-its to just pop some keywords, feelings, phrases. I've had people use colors that you want to share about the experience that you just focused on. Got energy, excitement, connection, engaged. People acknowledged and engaged me when the passion of the artist was tangible. Non-judgmental atmosphere, connected to others. Very personal welcome to the event. Very good. Any others? Warm and genuine. All right. We'll keep hold of all that. I'm going to put y'all into some breakouts for about 10 minutes. These are no host breakout rooms. And so in your rooms, they're going to be really small groups. You're going to want to take some time to share as you are comfortable the story about the memory that you pulled forward. You don't want to get too in the weeds. You do kind of want to hit the highlight reel so that everyone gets a chance to share. I'm going to try to do groups of 3 or 4 so that, again, everybody gets an opportunity to share and be heard. In between stories, if you could all indulge me with just a collective breath before you move on to the next story. That way everybody feels heard, acknowledged, seen. The goal is to come back and share similarities, takeaways, dissonance. And yeah, and then we'll keep moving through. So I'm going to pop you into some breakout rooms. We'll be in breakout room for about 10 minutes and see you back in a little bit. Welcome back. Everybody should be zooming back through the magic portal.
I know. So I was telling them how the power of the host has. You can just be like, zoom, get back into my room.
I know. And I've been in these rooms where everybody's like, oh no, you don't need it. Ah. So I try to like, just a reminder, and 3, 2, and come back.
Welcome back, everyone. Hopefully you made it back.
So far, so good. So far, so good. We still have about 8 people maybe out in the portal somewhere.
Oh gosh.
Oh, it's fine. It's usually folks like squeezing those last seconds out of the. Here they come. Yep. And everybody's back. Welcome back, everyone. So the moment that most people really don't like to be invited into, would anyone like to share how the conversation went in your breakouts? April.
and our group can chime in. Our group was Linda, Vivian, Susan, Trisha, and myself. And we, three of us had experiences that with the arts, an event that related to family and what the pride we saw of having family members present or their artwork. And that was part of our experience. But all of us experienced just the joy of seeing an artist perform or present their work and just in awe of their talent and the surroundings and nonverbal expression amongst others in the audience.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Did I miss anything from our group?
Oh, no, from your group.
You can go, Martha.
Well, I just, I'm a little biased towards diversity, having led that task force in the Arts Council board for the last several years. And so I commented on the very excellent statement by Carol. Danny, my group also included Angela and Nicole, that, I felt my first reaction when I saw this wonderful group of dancers, that it was so white. The appellation, what was it called? The group that does the clog dancing.
Footworks.
Yeah, Footworks. Thank you. And I commented that I had become sort of completely sensitized to the fact that it was an all white group, even though it was representative of an all white community in the Appalachians. And Angela helped me understand that there are many dimensions to the term diversity. That it can be generational, it can be all kinds of things that don't necessarily imply race or gender. And I thought that was interesting. And then just as Nicole was getting started to help us understand her fascinating background growing up in the circus and then moving to an all-white town in Long Island, we had to end. So I didn't hear the rest of it. But the thing that I remember from this conversation is for me anyway, is to think more broadly about the ways in which diversity can impact us and to be more tolerant of these very different definitions and always to be thinking about diversity in the various and multiple ways that it can be defined.
Yeah, very much so. I've got a great image that I'll share with the group after the call that you can have just around intersectionality and how there are inherent attributes and acquired attributes and what all those can kind of mean and how they overlap. So I'll be sure to share that with Nicole to circulate and the group to circulate to y'all after today's call. Thank you. Anyone else?
In our group, I had Laura, Donna, and Deborah. Deborah's with me right now. We heard a lot of being present, really engaged with the artists and how the artists spoke. We heard alive, feeling in the moment, excitement from the audience in general, and the connection with the community from their events.
Very good. Thank you.
And I'll share super briefly. I was in a group with Laylee and Gina, and the two main things that we really focused on were community and collaboration. Those were the themes that came up the strongest.
Yeah, it shows up in a lot of different ways. I mean, just the feeling of belonging, the feeling of being invited, the feeling of being welcomed. And a lot of the things that y'all bring up are things that we hear very, very much from the folks that we interact with in our audiences, in our program participants, and the attendees, and the folks that we just interact with who are our friends and our neighbors, who show up in other communities as well, right? So that the arts experiences, the way that we're constructing invitation isn't unique to us, it's everywhere. So I want to say thank you. So inclusion happens in a variety of ways, but most often results in a sense of belonging, feeling seen or heard, finding yourself in that moment. And so thank you for taking that journey. So now we're going to go to the other side. This does tend to be a little more challenging, especially for folks who are with us today, who are part of the global majority or who are traditionally or intentionally marginalized by offerings. We're going to do the same exercise, but I'm going to ask you a different question. So again, if everyone could close or lower your eyes or turn off your camera, whatever is most comfortable, and recall for a moment a time in your memory where you attended or participated in an artistic performance or event or experience, and you felt incredibly unwelcomed, not seen, like an outsider, uncomfortable, awkward, or however you define that feeling. Again, I invite you to recall the elements, the ingredients that culminated in that moment: visuals, verbals, sights, sounds, feelings, the building, the space, the people you interacted with. And then again, take yourself back to what made you decide on that experience. What was the lead up to finding yourself in that moment and that experience? Immerse to the extent that you are aware, but not reliving that moment deeply, and make some observations. We're gonna, again, take about 3 minutes, jot some things down, and we'll continue on in after that. So I'm gonna set my timer and I'm gonna be quiet. And 2, 1, and if everyone could come back, we're gonna pop over to that Jamboard. Page 3 should have the title little in our little on the nose, unwelcome. You're going to want to drop your post-its. Oh, surprised to find yourself feeling unwelcome. Hadn't anticipated that. Yeah. Sometimes it's the expectation that why wouldn't we be welcome in most spaces? All spaces. Others? Oh, it felt tribal. Can whoever put that be a little more specific? Felt invisible, angry, and misunderstood. Confused and struggling to understand. Not acknowledged, although I stuck out like a sore thumb. Dark and confining. Awkward and unsure. Oh, okay. So it was like a tight community. The group had been together a long time and didn't want newcomers. All right, not being able to speak comfortably without feeling judged. Felt like my time and talents were not needed, welcome, or valuable. Awkward, not good enough to be there. This is a harder feeling to kind of deal with. So I'm gonna invite y'all back out to breakout rooms again. I'm gonna recreate them. So you get mixed people. Okay, and as before, as you are comfortable, share the story that you had in your memory that you brought forward. Again, we're looking for similarities, themes, dissonance, discovery, and we'll take about nine minutes. And when we come back, we'll share and then continue on. So I'm gonna open the magic portal and away y'all go. 2, 1. And if everyone could come back, we're gonna pop over to that Jamboard. Page 3 should have the title, little in our little on the nose, unwelcome. You're gonna want to drop your Post-its. Oh, surprised to find yourself feeling unwelcome. Hadn't anticipated that. Yeah. Sometimes it's the expectation that why wouldn't we be welcome in most spaces? All spaces. Others? Oh, it felt tribal. Can whoever put that be a little more specific? Felt invisible, angry, and misunderstood. Confused and struggling to understand. Not acknowledged, although I stuck out like a sore thumb. Dark and confining. Awkward and unsure. Oh, okay. So it was like a tight community. The group had been together a long time and didn't want newcomers. All right, not being able to speak comfortably without feeling judged. Felt like my time and talents were not needed, welcome, or valuable. Awkward, not good enough to be there. This is a harder feeling to kind of deal with. So I'm gonna invite y'all back out to breakout rooms again. I'm gonna recreate them. So you get mixed people. Okay, and as before, as you are comfortable, share the story that you had in your memory that you brought forward. Again, we're looking for similarities, themes, dissonance, discovery, and we'll take about nine minutes. And when we come back, we'll share and then continue on. So I'm gonna open the magic portal and away y'all go. Well, welcome back, everyone. Might have lost a couple along the way. Oh, 2 more, and everybody's back. Okay, welcome back. And as before, I'd like to hold some space if anyone would like to share takeaways from their conversation.
Our group, it was Trisha and Carol, I think, and so we shared stories where we felt unwelcome, but Carol shared a story that was really a great example of it would have been a situation where she could have been unwelcome. So she has a daughter-in-law from another culture, and so when she went to the wedding, she stepped outside of her comfort zone, learned the language enough to give a speech and to make the connection with the people in that culture. And so I just thought, you have to be careful when people feel excluded, because especially if it's something that they're really wanting to be involved in, it could shut them down if they don't feel welcome. But the other thing, the example that Carol gave, that how she took it upon herself to expand herself, to learn about the culture. I just thought that was a great example of trying to, be more culturally competent.
Yeah. It is amazing how much difference it makes when people put the effort in to educate, learn, even just understand. And they come in with that energy and they come in with that demonstration. Yeah, thank you. Anyone else?
I mean, unless somebody else wants to talk for our group, but Linda and Caitlin and I were a group, and we didn't have a lot of experience in that we could say, oh yeah, we were excluded, other than maybe when it was outside of our normal groups in another county, working with people that people tended to stay with people they felt comfortable with and not reading the room. So we kind of turned our discussion into, do we do that? Do we just stay with the people we're comfortable with at an event, or do we venture out and say, hey, say hello to somebody or sit with somebody new, make that always a practice? So we talked a lot about that in that lesson, to make sure to look around the room.
Yeah, it's such an interesting balance, because it's both how does the experience foster that interaction, but then also what we take control of and what we commit to bringing when we enter those spaces that we're not used to being a part of. And being excluded shows up in so many different ways that, while I think there's a lot of things that are, very prominent and forward in terms of the conversation around, race and, even gender, but it happens in geography, it happens in socioeconomics, it happens in so many different ways that, a lot of these conversations give us that perspective too. So before we leave the Jamboard and before I go on, I just want to let you know I dropped that image that I mentioned earlier onto the Jamboard, and I'll just make sure that Nicole and group has the link to that Jamboard so that you all have access to it. Anyone else want to share before we move on? All right, I'm here coming. I didn't think I would take the whole time. So what I do want to do though, before we continue, is that I just want to invite everyone to take a moment to recalibrate. So if you could put both hands on your heart, take a deep breath in and breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. Last time, breathe in and breathe out. So the reality in this moment is that there are very distinct factors in both creating a welcoming space or an unwelcoming space through language, imagery, content, energy, and interaction. And that creation begins even before people arrive. It's in your communications, your marketing materials, your website. So when we're thinking about our marketing and communication assets, I really like this exercise for rooms of mixed individuals, organization type, career path, gender, ethnicity, and race, because it also reminds us that everyone brings a variety of lived experiences resulting from our socioeconomic status, gender, sexual orientation, religious beliefs, geographic location, age, and ability. And this intersectionality is part of what makes equity even more complex, but it is also a way to find common ground and shared spaces. Intersectionality can provide a path to the work and can strengthen your understanding. Some folks think that diversity, equity, inclusion, and access are add-ons to the work for your organization, but the truth is that it is and should be DNA. Inclusive language can take many forms and requires skill, humility, and knowledge building. So I'm going to take just a little bit to talk about about different ways that exclusionary language shows up. Hopefully we'll get to a couple of things that you can do about it. You can take action this week still. I've got 2 resources I want to share, and if we run out of time, I do have links, and then we'll be able to wrap up for the day. So what pronouns do you use? Right now, there is still movement and adoption around the idea of utilizing people's pronouns. We used to say preferred pronouns, and now we're even dropping that acknowledging that pronoun use, that how people identify is not a preference, it is their humanity. And so if you've gotten even into the practice of saying, can everyone share their preferred pronouns, dropping that preferred is going to create a more inclusive space. Also, just putting it out there, We've invited our board members to add their pronouns to their bio page, and just sharing that activity. A lot of folks have added it to their signatures on emails. Those are all signals to individuals from communities that are in the LGBTQIA plus sphere, that at least your organization is doing some work, and that is a space where, they may find, community, or maybe, at least feel welcome, or understand that your organization is demonstrating its commitment to a value system. BIPOC. Right. So BIPOC became the terminology of late that encompasses and embraces actually a very limited subsection of people of the global majority. People of the global majority is now gaining some traction and momentum, and is still not widely accepted by people of color. People of color isn't widely accepted. I say all of that because I think it is really important, as you're thinking about the terminology that you use, that you understand why you're using it, and that it resonates with the communities that you're interacting with, or that you're working with, or that are, that you're looking to invite into your space. As I did at the beginning, one of the things that you can do is add a qualifier. These are the terms that we're going to be using because these are the terms that we use most often in our work, and always the invitation for folks to do their own work. Don't just use BIPOC because I used it, use it because that's what matters to the community that you're working with. And that's across all of that, right? So if you have arts and, they call it arts and aging, but if the people in that program don't want to be called, old folks, are they elders? Or, somebody else said we're seasoned. Okay, let's do that. So it's really about being responsive to the communities that you're working with. Folks, esteemed humans and individuals. Another way that exclusionary language is showing up is just in our typical welcomes. When you say ladies and gentlemen, guess what? You've left people out, and you've indicated to folks that you're approaching the work from a very traditional standpoint, because there are so many ways that people are identifying, especially when it comes to gender. There are a number of tools out there, and I'll share a couple later as we get to the end, but thinking about what are those neutral words, and then how do you incorporate those, not just into your welcome, but how do you incorporate them into your language? I've gotten away from possessives when I talk about the team that I work with. I've gotten away from possessives when I talk about the folks that I work with directly, because I think it also acknowledges and honors that they're humans in their own right. And so really looking at the content of your website, the language in your emails, the way, the tone, the structures, the marketing materials, all of that has opportunity to be examined. You're going to make mistakes. I'm here to tell you it's okay. It's the trying and the putting in the effort that matters. Perfection is not real, and we are all works in progress. So don't let the fear of making a mistake keep you from doing this work. Being people first. This has really been around folks who are in the disability community wanting to be acknowledged for being people before their disability. So when you're talking about, people who utilize mobility devices, or people who have visual impairments. I am not an expert in that language. I'm learning myself, but there are a lot of tools and resources that you can access on the internet. I'll be sharing one later that gives a flavor and some additional resources as well, but really thinking about your people first language, so that people feel included and feel acknowledged and seen. And again, learning how those communities want to be referenced and named is also really helpful in guiding that work. Ageism, we struggle with it. I know that I often, young lady, or even though they wanted to be called seasoned veterans, masking and putting those words, means that those experiences or that content or this moment isn't intended for anybody outside of that. It can also be condescending and a little bit diminutive. So you want to be thoughtful about how you're using those references. If you're trying to talk about this being an event for a broad range of ages, all ages welcome, intergenerational, family friendly, but even family friendly has its own connotation. So, thinking about even, your ticket packages. I'm a family of 5. Nothing honks me more than here's a special discount for a family of 4. I don't know how to show up for that. I like my brain starts glitching. And so thinking about what does that mean? Because we're not nuclear families anymore, and we haven't been for decades, and we need to catch up to what that looks like. So when you're thinking about ageism, it isn't just about discounting and diminishing the role of elders in our community, but it's also about how we are making assumptions about people in different age ranges or how people are creating family now. So just some things to think about. And the last and my most favorite, happy holidays, y'all. A lot of folks don't and like glitch at that season's greetings. But I think it's more about reminding yourselves and the community that you interact with that you see them. So if you have a population, for example, just up the street is a neighborhood that is dominantly Jewish. If I was doing work in that community, of course I would say Happy Hanukkah. I would be thoughtful and mindful around their religious observances, because that's that community. You have to honor who they are, and also make sure that you understand how all of that interplays, right? That like by acknowledging one community, another community might feel not acknowledged. So really understanding who in the community is moving through your spaces, who is it that you are working with, collaborating with, partnering with, have relationship with. What does that mean then as you're thinking about your programming, your meeting schedule, your access to all of those communities? And then what does that look like within the construct of your communications, right? So, I've seen a lot of groups embrace Kwanzaa during the holidays, or their, Merry Christmas, season's greetings. We celebrate everybody and hold space for everybody. And I'm here for that too. Like, I think it's about honoring your authentic space and seeing the community that you are interacting with and supporting. So I've dropped a couple of nuggets about what you can do about it. Some of the more formal things that you can do to be mindful of your language, mindful of how these things are showing up in your materials. Add an inclusive language section to your style guide. A lot of us have documents that guide the way we use our logos, our fonts, what words, what spaces, all of those things. You can also incorporate how you want to reference different communities, or how you want to label different areas. The more information that you can share with rationale as to why, where you got it, the more it helps everyone in your organization understand how to move and how to speak. It also can be something then that you can share with volunteers, so that there's consistency as audiences are coming through, as the community is participating. It's not dissonant, that like your volunteers are speaking the same language, your docents are speaking the same language, your website speaks the same language, your formal staff speaks the same language. So those guides can be really helpful in sharing that consistency. Build or borrow a language bank. The language bank link that I shared at the top of our time together is pretty extensive and is built from a number of resources, but that doesn't limit you to having 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 terms that are commonly used, that if everybody's using them the same way, especially terms that have multiple ways of being interpreted, how your organization wants to use that word and sharing that with folks will help people understand and build consistency in the vocabulary. Normalizing using the words. It is hard. The first time supremacist culture flew out of my mouth, I needed a minute. And so did the people around me. The first time that I said, you know, this is actually a racist practice. I had feelings, people had feelings. But normalizing the words, normalizing using the words, and making sure that people understand what's behind it. And also normalizing saying all the words. So BIPOC is shorthand, but it's Black, Indigenous, people of color. LGBTQIA+ is shorthand. And from my experiences and interactions, communities don't want to be shorthanded. They want to be acknowledged and seen. So normalize using the words so that people feel comfortable and understand what those words mean. Use the Google, y'all. There is so much information out there. Before you ask somebody of that community to give you an answer, go use the Googles, because there is a lot of information out there. And really, the work is on our shoulders individually and collectively to educate ourselves and to learn and to be curious before we ask someone else to take that work and do that work for us. Use plain language and avoid jargon. Keep it all simple. And it's the probably path of least resistance to minimizing misinterpretation or misunderstanding. So when you're writing, think about the simplest way to refer to something, the easiest way to, because you're also then conveying simplicity in use, simplicity in participating. There's just a lot there. And so the more flowery, complicated, and convoluted the language, the harder it is for people to see themselves in that experience, in that, you know, material, in that relationship. So just remember, check all your communications and all your platforms. There are a lot of things that we put out to the world. Our Facebook, all of our socials, right? So Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. If you're on TikTok, congratulations. I can't do it. But think about all the channels that you're delivering and distributing information through, and then make sure that you're taking an eyeball on them. That if you've decided we're going to talk about the Black, Indigenous, people of color in our community as people of the global majority, it's time to go visit everything that you've done, everything that's out there, any entry point, and make sure that all of that's consistent. And then you're going to want to review that on a regular basis. Monthly is probably too much. Once a year may not be enough, depending on what else is going on in the world. But set a goal for yourself to check all of those platforms, to check in with your communities, to keep up to date on what the vocabulary is and how people are interacting with it. People of the global majority has been gaining momentum for, I would say, like the last 3 years outside of academia. And it's still not broadly adopted, but it's out there. To be aware of it and to have a thoughtful, intentional, and mindful decision to or not to use it, but to at least be aware of it. So stay in touch with your peers, have more conversations like this. It'll bring forward a lot of that knowledge building. And then you can also understand how, more deeply, how the community is also just interacting with these terms. And when you aren't sure, just ask. It's really, it's really easy. Not for education, ask for clarity. And we are almost out of time, and I'm going to leave time for questions. So I'm going to drop 2 links in the chat box. One is a link to the National Assembly of State Arts Agencies has an inclusive language guide that's really extensive and helpful and informative, and includes other resources that you can access. So I'm going to drop that link in the chat for y'all. Go take a look at it. It's really useful. And surprisingly enough, LinkedIn also has a pocket guide, which I also enjoy as a resource, pocket guide to inclusive language for marketers. And so, you know, like I said, the Googles are an incredible place to find information. And also share what you find with colleagues. Open conversation. Be like, hey, I just saw this guide. Have you seen this guide? You haven't seen this guide? It's amazing. Let's talk about it. So When thinking about inclusive language, it isn't just checking a box. Remember, it is about invitation and agency. It involves relationship building, genuine and earnest interest in building understanding, and authentic investment of time, intention, and resource. And with that, I'd like to invite y'all to ask any questions.
Thank you, Ruby. That was amazing.
That was a lot.
It was a lot. I'm sitting there trying to like write notes like, oh my gosh. If anyone has questions, go ahead and put in or raise your hand and I can call and we can get, we do have, Ruby does have to leave by 12:30. So just want to make sure mindful of our time. But Angela.
I do have a question because I struggle with this, honestly. So our organization is minority led and we do specifically shows about African Americans. And so sometimes I struggle with letting everybody know that we want everybody to come to the shows. Like it's not for just African Americans, although the stories are, and the plays are primarily about that. And so knowing that different people have different tastes, and sometimes it's like, how do I get more people to understand that this is for them and about them as well as, about this particular story. So I do struggle with that. And then when I see other groups that have things that maybe typically my community, how do I get them more interested in things like that? Because when I was raised, we went to ballet symphony. I got to experience a lot of different types of arts that maybe people in my community didn't. So I struggle with that. Like, how do I make it where everybody knows? Because I feel like some people are like, oh, that's a African American thing.
Right. So a couple of things that come to mind. First, in the how do you bring your community to the other spaces? Think about organizing a night and say, hey, we're all going to go to this. And here's the things that might resonate with you because of this storyline, right? So it's about making those connections. I think when you're trying to bring in other folks, one, I would ask to examine, is the space welcoming, right? Because I know I've gone into spaces by myself and it's not always as comfortable. When I go with somebody of that community, it's a little less like, what are the ways that the space can invite those folks in, and how you draw connection to the rest of the community through the story, right? So that if it isn't just stories about, but if this is an uplifting story about a young adult coming of age, who doesn't resonate with that and who can't identify with that? And so how is that coming through so that people see themselves in the story and maybe invited by the story to be less daunted by the space, if that makes sense. But I mean, it's hard. I would assume I would assume white people would probably be like, I can't go there. Because it's also like, it's a really charged time. I think it's hard in all directions, because I think even people that might be curious might also be tentative because you don't know how you're going to be received. So are there opportunities to do mixers? Can you partner with another organization or another space where there are folks that you could introduce them to your organization and the work that you're doing? Can you send out, again, promoting the core of the story to places to say, hey, we'd love for y'all to come. We think this story would really resonate with your audience, with your neighborhood, that might be one way.
Well, fortunately, we do have a mixed following, so
good.
But we're, it's a concern of mine when we're marketing.
Yeah. I mean, you never want to not be who you are, right? Because there's a lot of strength and power there too. But yeah, I would think about highlighting the story.
I just wanted to confirm what Angela just said. You know, you've already got an audience that's bigger than certainly than the African American community, partly by your own marketing and partly by the marketing that the Chesapeake Arts Center, the Arts Council, and the other broader marketing tools use. So I mean, I think it's just a question of making sure you're in all of those marketing efforts and that there be on your website enough information to make it clear that this is not just an organization for African American participants, that because you've really already cut beyond that, and it's just a question of more general marketing to get people to come to your events.
Yeah, I think too, like in your imagery, right? That like on the other side, when you have predominantly white institutions and they have the one person of color, if you've got a really good mix of audience, like show that off, because people will be able to see, oh, I'm not going to be the only one. Nobody wants to be, none of us want to be the only one. But if they see that like, oh, all those folks in the lobby, like they're all, okay, I could do that. And there's a lot in the imagery that we use that can convey how authentic the representation and the mix of folks that are participating really is.
Does anyone have any other questions? No?
All right.
All right. Ruby, thank you again. That was your presentation is always incredible. We've learned a lot today, and if you could share me I think I grabbed all the links. We will have it on Arts Council's website. We will have it on Chesapeake Arts Center and Angel Wings. We will provide that. But if I missed anything, you could send just over to me and I'll make sure it's included. Our next presentation will be on accessibility on April 20th at 11 a.m. with Deanna is it Kilman, Trisha? Say her name right.
Dina Kilman.
Yeah. And I'm going blank on Jessica's last name, but we will send out an invite for that. So we hope you guys can join us. And again, thank you, Ruby, for your time.
Thank you, Ruby.
Thanks, y'all.
Yeah, look at our claps.
Thank you, Ruby. Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.